What's up, guys? This is Ryan from Bible Dingers. I am here with another exciting interview. This time with my friend Jeff Mingee. Jeff, how you doing, my friend?
Good, Ryan. How are you doing, man?
Doing well. Doing well.
Good.
So, I recently read Jeff's book and I really enjoyed it. So much to the point where I wanted to have him on the show to see if we could have a discussion about it and get a little bit more in depth with some of the topics that he covered in his book. Before we get into it, Jeff, could you just give us like a quick overview of the book so people know what we're even talking about?
Absolutely, man. So glad you enjoyed the book, Ryan. And before we jump into the book, I just want to make a comment that my son and I were listening to the Bible Dingers podcast one day in the car, and we laughed so hard at the camaraderie between you guys. We just loved listening to you guys, and then the content was super rich. So just
Awesome.
appreciate the podcast and honored to be here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
So the book is titled "Digital Dominion: 5 Questions Christians Should Ask to Take Control of Their Digital Devices," and it's a 100 or so page primer. It's not a 300-page textbook. This is sort of let's get our toes in the water level, But the idea is okay. We've got these devices from cell phones to laptops to Nintendo Switches to smart TVs, right? We've got these devices. Are we using them well? Do we have control over them, or do they have control over us? And
Mm.
and to what degree, and in what way? And then if we start asking those questions and we open up our Bible, and what does God have to say about how we use technology and digital devices? So, my attempt in this book is to simply give us 5 questions that are sort of like handles that we can think through to hopefully really honor God with our lives and enjoy the life that God has given us um, with all of our tech gizmos.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the overview. 5 simple questions. They're not complicated questions, but 5 simple questions that we can ask to take control of our digital devices.
So, at first thought here, why do you think that a book like this needs to be written? Because, if you ask somebody random on the street, I'm sure they would say that, they don't have any issue with overuse of their phone or their devices dominating them or anything like that. What how do you think that people are actually spending their days with their relation with their devices? Do you think it's to the point in 2022 where people are just spending way too much time on their phones, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think it does address an issue that needs to be addressed. So, if nobody else has a problem with their devices, Jeff Mingee has a problem with his device, right? So, I am far more concerned with my own sanctification and correcting my own practices in this book than anybody else's, and I hope that tone comes out. Um, it, I didn't do a survey, and I think it would be fascinating to do a survey to ask that question. Do you think do you have a problem with your devices? Because I think on people feel that tension. On the one
Mm,
hand, man, I'm so thankful for my devices. They enable me to do things like this podcast, right? I mean, I'm so thankful for them. But at the same time, in the same breath, I know, and I've got too many hours on that phone. I've
yeah.
got it's taking control of me, and I think that's why you're seeing both Christians and non-Christians start practices like digital Sabbaths and just
Mm,
say, you know what, I'm going back to a flip phone, and I'm gonna I'm gonna log off social media or most of it, or um, I think even people who are not Christians and don't hold to a biblical worldview are saying, yeah, this is the advancement of technology in my pocket is not always a good thing, and so I think we feel that tension. So yeah, man, that's the idea is that the book addresses that tension.
mm,
I think some people are going to read the book and come away and say, you know what? In order to honor God, I need to use my phone or my devices less. Amen and okay. Other people are going to read the book and walk away and say, in order to honor God, I need to use my devices more with more
Mm,
intentionality.
yeah.
Amen and okay, right? That's two different ways to go about it. But the question I want to ask is, man, are we exercising digital dominion?
Yeah. So you were talking about this tension that a lot of people feel here and there due to their phone usage. Why do you think that is? Do you think it is because it's just like everything that we do on our phones is out of laziness and we should be doing something productive, or what do you think the rub is there? Why are people feeling this tension to use their phones less?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think that everything we do on our phones or our devices is lazy, right? A lot of, again, this podcast, we're not doing this because we're lazy, but we're using
Yeah.
our devices, right? We're using our devices to be productive with this podcast. My my wife's my wife's 101-year-old grandfather lives in states away from us, and we have set it up so that we can take a picture from our phone and text it to a number, and it goes to his picture frame that's right beside his
Nice.
chair, right? And so he can see our kids playing sports and these things happening. um Man, we are not using that device because we're lazy, but
Mm,
because it affords us an opportunity that otherwise we wouldn't have. Um, so I think the tension that we're feeling is that we ha- if we're not careful, we can spend so much time on this mediated screen that we miss um, kind of analog life, right?
yeah.
In person, face to face life. That's one of the reasons I think Paul said, I mean, I have many other things I want to write to you, but I'd rather see you face to face, right?
Mm,
I'd rather have this conversation with you face to face. And so, for all of the good that our screens do, I don't think they can replace person to person, face to face reality. And
right.
I think that's the tension that we're feeling. I think that's where the struggle comes in is, all right, man, I'm really glad we could connect via a podcast. That's phenomenal. It's good to see you on the screen. I've heard your voice come through my car speakers. Now I've seen you, right? But still, even that, it would be even better to sit down at a table over a cup of coffee and say, all right,
Hmm.
let's chat. Let's talk.
Yeah, for
So I think
sure.
that's the tension we're feeling.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I can get with that. And you mentioned earlier that when some people feel this tension, they may go to a flip phone or take Sabbaths and things like that. Do you think that is the answer in how to control ourselves better and better have dominion over our devices, is to just go back to prior technology, or what?
Yeah, no, I don't think that's the answer because the issue when it comes to self control is not the devices we're using, it's the self,
Mm,
right? And so if we change the devices, man, we're just changing the expression of our lack of self control. Um,
right.
the games might be different, but I can waste just as much time on a flip phone as
Playing
um,
Snake.
that's right, man. That's the one that my mind automatically goes to.
Yep.
Um, so no, I don't think the answer is to go back to flip phones because if it was to go back to flip phones, well, let's go all the way. Let's just go. Let's be monks, right? Let's go jump right into a cave and abandon all technology and get rid of electricity. And no, I don't think that's the answer. The answer with um, exercising self control is to develop that habit of godliness, right? Of, man, am I honoring the Lord with my life, with my day, with the moment I wake up um, to the moment I go to sleep? So, how do I develop that habit of self control? And I think it's helpful to remember that self control is a fruit of the Spirit. So, we're not talking about let's just grit our teeth and I got to get better at self control. I got to get better at self control and just beat ourselves up until we get better. No, let's pursue the spiritual fruit of self control, the fruit of the spirit of self control by the power of the Spirit. Um, let's dig into the Word and see the Word work in us and through us. Let's jump into what one old theologian called the expulsive power of a new affection. I mean, if I
Mm.
have a problem with self-control and that's coming out in my devices, well, let me fall more in love with Jesus than I am with my device. And that love, that greater love for Jesus will expel, it'll replace, it'll kind of push into its proper place how I use my devices. So no, I don't think we should. I don't think we should become monks. I don't think we should go back to flip phones. I agree with Tony Reinke, who calls himself a tech optimist. I think God is at work in the tech world, and I'm thankful that he's using technological advances for his purposes.
So in that case, Christians, we have a calling on our life. We have the Great Commission. We're called to glorify God in everything that we do. How do you foresee us doing that with our devices? Especially as devices get more and more ingrained into our daily routine. How can we make sure that we're living out the Great Commission and glorifying Christ in everything that we do?
So Ryan, if I think living out the Great Commission, that's a helpful way to put it, because it is that it's an all of life commandment, right? Where we don't check in and out of the Great Commission. We're meant to all the time be obedient to it. So how does that apply to our digital devices? Well, on the one hand, and our devices enable us to get places that without them we would not be able to get. Give you an example. So one afternoon, not long ago, I'm in Southeast Virginia. Weather was nice enough. I sat on my back porch and I had a phone call through an app with one of our missionaries who's in Southeast Asia.
Hmm.
And without devices, I could not have done that. I was able to just hang out, spend a little bit of time talking to her, encourage her, pray with her, and be involved in her work in the Great Commission in that way, maintain
Hmm.
that relationship. You also think about all that our devices enable us to do. And I think many of the missionaries throughout Christian history, they would have loved to have the devices we have and the technological advancement we've got. So we can ask the question, man, how would a Lottie Moon or a Judson or whoever pick your missionary,
Hmm.
how would they leverage this device? When we get into social media, that takes on a whole different kind of conversation, man. How do we interact in a place like social media um, for the gospel, right? How do we not only create God glorifying content, but respond in God glorifying ways?
Yeah.
Um, and especially when the algorithm is designed to make us angry, right? I mean,
Right.
that's what it is, man. When I log on, there's an algorithm at work, and somebody is setting the plate that is being placed before me.
Yeah.
Whether or not I eat, that's up to me. But somebody's curating the meal, and they're not doing it for my godliness, right?
Right.
They're doing it to get more clicks, and that's
Right.
their job. You can't blame them for that.
Yeah.
Um, so, man, how do I interact in a digital Areopagus? Like, Paul walked into the Areopagus in Athens, and all of these competing views and different gods and views of God. And well, man, when you jump on your device and you log onto a social media platform, you're there. You're in the Areopagus.
Yeah.
So how are you gonna interact? So on the one hand, it's, man, how am I using this for to build relationships? How am I using this to create and interact with particular content? Um, One of the things that struck me as I was writing and researching for the book is the place of community in obeying the Great Commission, right? We're meant to obey the Great Commission as a church, not merely as individual Christians, but as a church community. And I wondered, man, what would it look like to go on mission in a digital world in community, and to say to a group of friends, hey, let's do this together. Now, on the one hand, that's going to mean a certain level of accountability. Hey, you posted this, I don't think you meant it to come across this way, but it came across this way. Um, some sort of corrective conversations. But on the other hand, what would it look like for you to say to a group of your friends, hey, look, I've got a bunch of non-Christian friends on social media, and I really want to engage them with the gospel. I'm going to post this question in hopes of prompting some conversations. Now, would you guys pray with me that this question prompts conversations?
Hmm.
And just, man, let's link up arms. Let's go for it together, so that we're encouraging one another in the mission. I don't know, Ryan, if you're familiar. About 20 years ago, a guy named John Piper preached a sermon about seashells, and
Mm-hmm.
his whole principle. I think there were about 20,000 college students gathered together, and he said, "Look, don't retire and then collect seashells and die and meet Jesus and say, 'Look at my seashell collection.' Like, that's not
Yeah.
the point of retirement. Get ready
Right.
to meet King Jesus. Go on mission." Well, my concern is that those 20-year-olds 20 years later are now 40, right? I'm preaching to the choir, and they're just clicking next episode, and they're
Yeah.
collecting digital seashells. And man,
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna meet Jesus, and we're gonna say, "Jesus, do you want to know how many series I watched on Netflix?" Like, that did not the point, man. Not the
Right.
point. Like, let's get to the mission. Let's get on mission for Jesus. Man, we got a lot of life to live, a lot of joy to experience. Let's leverage our devices for that joy.
What so you touch and this is something that I'm interested to hear what you have to say about you touched on how the algorithm is set up for it's set up for interaction, and a lot of times these companies get interaction by divisive arguments and things like that because people are constantly commenting and going back and forth after each other, so it sort of builds up um interactions, and thusly they can sell their advertising slots for more money to the marketing companies. Um, so with that being said, I think most people understand that at this point. Um, how do you think a Christian should go about being on social media, knowing that it's so divisive? Because on the one hand, you're gonna see, I'm sure, inflammatory posts, from atheists and people who are pro any sort of political idea that we may think is anti-Christ and anti-Christianity. How do we go about interacting with those people who are sort of inflaming, our maybe even we could call it righteous anger, when once we see that on these social media sites?
Ryan, that's a great question. And I want to be careful not to lay down a new law, right? And
Yeah.
say, if you want to be righteous, you have to get rid of your social media accounts. Right?
Hmm.
That's so tempting.
Right.
But I don't think that's the right answer. Chris Martin's book, Terms of Service, is really helpful in understanding and thinking through this topic. And he points out that the waters are poisoned. The waters are poisoned. So when we
Yeah.
jump into the stream, we've got to know what we're getting into. And so how do we interact in social media platforms or on social media platforms which are designed to make us angry? Okay,
Hmm.
on the one hand, if you are a Christian and you have a social media account and you jump on and you find yourself feeling angry, right? You can, like, you're ready to get those thumbs flying and post, like, okay, stop and remember, okay, it's working, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's doing their job and they're doing it really well.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like when I read a headline of an article and I start to get angry over the headline, I just have to remember, man, the author nailed it.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't even read the article yet, and I've just seen the headline, and I'm angry. I'm doing exactly what the author of that headline wanted me to do. It worked.
100%. You're going
It
to
worked.
click. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I'm
for
gonna
sure.
click.
Yeah.
So let's just stop and recognize, okay, hold on. This is what it's designed to do. This
Mm,
is what it's designed to do. I think it's helpful when we jump onto social media accounts to remember that it is almost impossible to have a nuanced, full conversation on a platform like any social media platform. They just
yeah.
don't allow it. There's, I don't think so.
Mhm.
And so let me approach it that way. When I see somebody post something that infuriates me, rather than launching into it thinking, I fully understand your argument and now I'm going to just crush you. Let me say, all right, hold on. Let me ask questions,
Yeah.
right? Let me just post little questions. I had I was a youth pastor for 6 years a long time ago, and I had a former student. This maybe a year ago, a former student who's now a medical doctor. Um, Post something about trusting the science, and it was the way she worded it. I did not think was very helpful, and so I simply asked some questions, and she was the way she wrote the post basically said scientists can't make mistakes; they can only learn new information. And I was like, hold on, like first of all, I want you to know I am pro you. Right? I'm saying
Yeah.
this to the student. I love you. I am for you.
Mhm.
I think you can make mistakes.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and through the interaction, she said, You're right, Jeff. I'm just tired of people trusting Dr. Google." And I was like, "Oh no, I'm with you on that because Dr. Google has an office next door to Pastor Google, right?"
Yeah.
And so I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
But it was only because I asked questions and had a little bit of humor in there to help her kind of understand where she was coming from. And man, if I had launched into that, I wouldn't have won the argument because nobody wins arguments on social
Mhm.
media. And B, I would have lost the friendship. You know.
Yeah.
So when you log on to social media, okay, remember that it's designed to get you angry. So if you get angry, it's working. You
Mhm.
can't you can't get mad at that. It's working. Somebody's doing their job well. B, ask questions instead of making assumptions.
Yeah.
Sit down, say, okay, let me ask some questions. Let me try to understand. And then the third part of that I would say is leverage social media conversations as a starting point, not the finishing point of a conversation. I think social media interactions should lead us to offline interactions where we can have that fuller conversation with nuance if possible. Sometimes it's not, but I think that's a helpful approach to take. But man, it's a good question. You know, what a gift social media is to be able to interact. I mean, I think you and I connected in part through social media and through the podcast network that you guys are part of. So, and
Yeah.
I'm thankful for the social part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. We wouldn't even be having this conversation if it wasn't for our devices and getting connected through that. So, yeah, I definitely appreciate it for that reason. And what I've been thinking about is I think there does sometimes tend to be this feeling of, okay, I'm just going to check out. And if I'm going to be totally transparent, I think I might still be on that train. I haven't had any social media for many years at this point, and it started with just sort of a break from social media. I was like, man, this is nice.
Yeah.
It's stress free. There's no tension in my life anymore.
Yeah. Yep.
um, and it sort of just stuck. And so for many years, I just said, man, I don't want to deal with that. But I think I've come to the realization that that could probably be the wrong attitude because there is this powerful device that should probably be getting used for the sake of the gospel and growing community and things like that. But what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that checking out completely from social media and just saying I'm not going to deal with this, I'm not going to do this, do you think that may be too far to the other side of things?
Well, no, and again, really trying not to lay down a new law, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so I'm so good at creating new laws. Um, no, no, because there's a lot of wisdom in that in saying, uh, man, I don't want to put anything worthless before my eyes.
Mm,
And so I'm out. I'm out. That can be a great way. But now you're feeling that tension of, man, am I missing an opportunity? And um so that tension is a well experienced one. You know, right now I have deleted all social media apps from my phone except Instagram. I don't know why I've still got that one, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I just need to delete that one too. Uh, but um, I still have the accounts, and I can still
Mhm.
jump onto my account on my laptop, and if I need to post something. But um, I think that's a tension we just need to be aware of. And I would encourage listeners, man, try it for a while. Like,
Mm.
y- you know, give yourself a 3-month window where you're gonna say, you know what, I'm gonna get rid of my social media accounts. I'll log on once a week to post a Christ honoring, Christ exalting thought.
Yeah.
And I'll check it again next week and see if there's any interaction I need to follow up on. But um, just figure out, man, how does it fit into my life right now? And um, or another way to go about it is to say, man, let me pick 5 friends on social media or followers or whatever term you need to use, and let me start praying for them.
Mm.
And I'm going to pray that the Lord would use this platform to draw them to Christ. Um, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So a lot of different ways to go about it, man. But I appreciate the tension.
Yeah. For sure, man, for sure. And it's definitely something interesting and sort of unique to our time. It would be nice if there was some church church history books, that theological councils that have, dug deep into the topic of technology, but it seems an issue unique to our time that we need to wrestle through here.
Well, that's
So,
definitely one of the challenges of technology is it's always changing. I mean,
yeah.
Neil Postman wrote it's not a theological book, but amusing ourselves to death, or
Yeah.
yeah, amusing ourselves. And he wrote it when TV was coming out, and
Mhm.
he's like, hey, you need to tread carefully here, tread
Yeah.
carefully. And so much of what he said is applicable even today. So while there may not be theological books from church history that are writing about TikTok, right? There are theological books that are writing about how to live as a Christian in this world.
Mm.
Um, and you can dig into yeah, I'm trying to pick some, JC Ryle's Holiness. Right. And Ryle will help you think about what holiness is and how to pursue holiness. And you can apply that. Or if
Right.
you need a shorter book, take Ryle's Thoughts for Young Men. It
Mm.
applies to women too. But man, 75 pages, I think, of just, man, practical, godly living advice. Now, again, Ryle didn't know what TikTok was or was going to be or anything like that, but he understood who God was and is and how to live in light of that. So dig into those old theologians that can help us along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, and guys, I highly recommend Jeff's book. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to be doing a book review following the release of this interview. And honestly, it was probably one of my favorite books so far this year. I really enjoyed it. It's easy to read. That's not necessarily true of some books that go through a theology on different types of things, but it was easy to understand, easy to read, and I really enjoyed it. So I really highly recommend Jeff's book. It was awesome. I loved it. So
Ryan, thanks so much, man. That means a lot. I'm glad, thankful that it's being used, and it's an encouragement.
yeah, man. Yeah, an interesting conversation today. This is my first time diving into the topic of social media in general. So it was an interesting conversation, man. I'm glad you came on to discuss this with me.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ryan. Thanks for having me again. Really appreciate the podcast and all you guys do.